All right, I'm going to do something different. I have all these paper clippings, newspaper. I got some static cling going on here. Look at that. Anybody remember going to the science center and touching the electricity ball? Static electricity make your hair stand up on end. When I went back years later, they had taken that out of the science center. It was the best thing about it. The best part about the science center, every time I seen the commercial come on, I'd say, I want to go there and touch that ball. But anywho, it's winter time. Everybody's in their feelings, and all the holidays are over. And one of my family members say, "Oh, you must be feeling sorry for yourself." I'd say, "Well, at least I'm feeling sorry for myself, because no one's feeling sorry for me as they should." Anyways, I found all these paper clippings, newspaper clippings, in my books, and I thought this is a story written by, oh, it's a man. I thought it was a lady. By Patrick Ramsbottom. Patrick Ramsbottom. And his father was, he liked the sippy. I'm going to assume he was an alcoholic. I haven't read the story. So anyways, can you see? I still haven't figured out how that's his daddy and him. And I still haven't figured out how to flip my phone around. Alright, so what I'm going to do is this going to be a series where I read newspaper clippings, as long as I don't get a headache. And I'm doing it without my glasses in a dimly lit room. So here we go. But anyways, I was just saying, I don't think the younger generation is going to be one to looking through scrapbooks. Like, there are a few romantics left in this century, I believe, but for the most part, people are all about digital, and a lot of these stories are not saved in the archives and things like that. Like, there's things that people are never going to see again, and that makes me sad. There was a Twilight Zone episode where the man, he had the glasses, and he said, "I hope time stops and the world disappears, and then all I'll do for the rest of my days is read." And then he's surrounded by all these books, and he looks out, and there's no world outside, no people anyways. And then guess what happens? He steps on his glasses, and he can't read. Oh, that was my horrible. That's what I thought. I thought, oh my gosh, if that ever happened to me. Anyways, I just found another way around it, and I'd maybe listen to tapes of talking, of stories. Anyways, so this man wrote this newspaper article. That's why you can turn your trauma into something positive and something entertaining. But anyways, let me read the story and get on with it, because I am a rambling lady. Okay. He sat, shaking at the kitchen table, filled an 8-ounce tumbler 3/4 full of vodka, and downed it in one slow, continuous movement, as if it were water. He winced, clutched his trembling sides, and whispered, "I hope I can keep this down." Flesh hung from his atrophied arms and the protruding abdomen, suggesting a liver that was about all but shot. With stark white bristles covering most of his head, he gave the impression of a very odd man. He was 52, and this is my last memory of a man I called Dad. My dad died shortly after, and I recall a sense of relief rather than sadness. With those funeral members who attended his funeral, the relief being that he would not have to endure that seemingly never-ending downward spiral, and we would no longer have to witness it. In 4 years, I will be the same age he was when he died. I find myself thinking about him more than ever as I try to answer some fundamental questions about the man whom I knew so little about. Immersion in middle age has me seeking clarity in my background through an updated, more mature version of my father. It's not coming easily. Who was William Anthony Ramsbottom? Ramsbottom? I don't know. My rudimentary take on him was that he was an emotionally stunted only child, born to parents who in their 50s were incapable of teaching their child of the fundamentals of life. He was doted on, spoiled, and ultimately formed a picture of life as it wasn't. Unable to accept reality, he escaped it. Having said this, I confess to having no real understanding of who he was or why he chose a life in which each day began and ended with various amounts of alcohol coursing through his veins, or why, once he started down that hazy path, he was unable to stop. If his home life didn't start him off on the right foot, his vocational choice gave him the opportunity to plunge in with both feet. My father was a salesman. His travels took him throughout northern Ontario in the 1950s, selling clothing on behalf of a garment wholesaler. He was, according to those who knew him in his youth, a good-looking, personable, smartly dressed man with a gift of the gab and a marvelous sense of humor. All the characters he used to his advantage as he plied his trade up and down Highway 11, and by the standards of the day, he was quite successful at it. He worked hard and lived hard. On the few road trips I took with him, the day's work ended with drinks, first at the hotel bar with fellow travelers, later in someone's room. It was a process repeated nightly. Dad was a picky drinker. Wine was never served with dinner, and I could count on one hand the number of times I saw him with a beer. He drank hard liquor. For the last 10 years, it was vodka, a 26er, or sometimes a Mickey every day. If alcoholism is a progressive disease, my father followed in lockstep. As some of my friends' fathers jumped off at various stages of the illness, mine continued into the abyss. And throughout it all, Mother endured the hospitalizations, the DTs when they get the shakes, the withdrawal symptoms, and the inevitable small town scrutiny. His promises to quit never materialized. Each release from the hospital ended with the same drunken result. He was on for the full ride. Even one of those pivotal times when we finally did leave him, Dad didn't stop. It devastated him initially, but he was on a mission and nothing could knock him off the tracks. No, that was not completely true. One Christmas, I believe, I caused the caboose to sway. I wrote him a letter on Christmas morning and stuck it under the front seat of the car, right beside the bottle of vodka. I asked, no pleaded, for a day of reprieve, a day when drinking and fighting could cease. I heard him leave for a short car ride, a little eye-opener. That signified the beginning of another day. He arrived home shortly thereafter, stone cold sober, but with an alcohol-free body shaken uncontrollably. He collapsed into bed and stayed there all day. By Boxing Day morning, he'd had enough, and by mid-morning, his day had that familiar glow to it. As their marriage crumbled, my parents reached a breaking point where talk always turned angry and most communication was done by letter. One of them would leave a note on the kitchen table and the other would write a response. Sometimes, however, something said in a letter required a quicker rebuttal, and I remember heart-thumping nights, hearing my father climb the stairs to the back bedroom where my mother now slept to set the record straight. In Dad's case, physical violence was rare. Psychological tormenting was the norm. As a child, there's nothing like lying in bed, listening to your drunken father downstairs, loading and unloading a 12-gauge pew-pew, and wondering whether he was coming up, and at the same time praying he'd turn the pew-pew on himself. Mother sought comfort in meetings of Al-Anon, that's for family members of alcoholics, as she struggled to raise 3 teens and understood the natures of Dad's disease. I grew to hate him. When I looked into those glassed-over, froggy eyes, I seethed. And then, one day, after what seemed like an eternity, Mother finally was in a position to free us from the daily madness and torment. On a beautiful summer's day, shortly after Dad departed for work, the movers pulled up to the side door of the house and loaded a few things we estimated would fit into the 4-room walk-up. 2 hours later, the nightmare was over. I will never forget the first night, sitting down to dinner and savoring the simplest of gifts, a meal without tension. Dad eventually sold what quickly became a decrepit old house and took a place above the barber shop. His only caller was the taxi driver who dropped off a brown paper bag each morning. So basically, he was just drinking every day after his family left him. Every year, I returned to that distant childhood town and spend a weekend with friends that I've known since I was a boy. Some of their fathers struggled with the same demons as mine. I wondered about what was in their dad's makeup that wasn't in mine. How comforting it must be, I think, to know that your father faced such a disease and beat it, and how disconcerting it is for those of us whose last memory is of a father too old for his age and dead before his time. All that remains are questions, a sense of non-closure, and a prayer that on occasion offers a degree of comfort and begins, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. The serenity prayer. So basically, his father succumbed to his alcoholism, and it's just his take on what he witnessed, you know. As a child, you wonder all around you, why is my dad like that, or my mother like that? And other parents just seem to be coping just fine, or if they're drinking as well. How come they didn't meet their demise, you know, at the bottom of the bottle? So it's quite interesting how his perspective on the little story and how he came to terms with it. But yeah, just a story of alcoholism and what's it called? The stigma back then was, you know, everybody knew their husbands or wives were drinking, and nobody talked about it. And then Al-Anon came along, and Alateen, is it? And all those groups, and then, you know, people nowadays, you know, everybody has mental illness or alcoholism or addiction issues in their family, and it's becoming a lot easier to talk to. A lot of people I meet, it's real funny because I'm very upfront about what I've seen or witnessed in my life or went through, and they'll open up to me. And these are people that are professionals, or they're not people that you would think, even though everyone's affected, they're not people that you would think would be affected by anything. Do you know what I mean? They can put on a brave face every day and they look like nothing's bothering them, but they have the most, not secrets, but the most issues. And they'll open up to me knowing that, you know, there's nothing I haven't seen or heard before. And then I just watch them just, they'll open up to me and then they'll just float through life with the same stuff going on. But they just like to keep it neat and tidy and out of the way so no one sees. There's a lot of people like that. So don't ever think that you're struggling by yourself, because just a lot of people don't talk about it. More people talk about it now than before. But there's still a lot of people that mental health and addiction affects. They just don't want, they're just not ever going to maybe let it see the light of day. But anywho, I don't know. That was a lovely story, because I like that he put his perspective as a young child and what he's seen. And I think he came to terms with his father's alcoholism and realized obviously it's nothing he could control. And that the whole thing is he got away. His family, his mom and his siblings, they all got away from it because, you know, what you may be putting people through may not look like much to you, but it really does affect people's daily lives, their mental health, and their just their growing up and stuff, their milestones. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to be reading more of them because I do have a lot of clips of these stories, and like I said, I enjoy reading them, and it's a good little exercise for me. So y'all have a great night. Take care.